Well, I've finally done it. I've made it out of the house, which has been a bit of a problem with the lockdown over the last few weeks. However, I'm here, I'm outside. It's absolutely lovely, and I'm doing something that I didn't think that I'd be doing. I'm testing out this new camera, the Fujifilm X-T3. Now, I've come to a place called Castle Combe, which they've got a race circuit here, but they've also got this really picturesque Cotswold village. And so today, what I'm going to be trying to do is to take some pictures around that village. Now, I know a lot of people who take photos. They're sort of fair weather photographers. You know, if you're really into landscapes, the thing you'll do is go out very early in the morning, very late at night, get those sunrises and sunsets. You'll be at places at a specific time of day. Well, a lot of photographers can't do that. A lot of photographers are kind of limited to going out during the day or going out at weekends, and that's where places like Castle Combe can kind of come into their own. They're brilliantly lovely little villages that you can go to, and there's shots here that are absolutely classic shots. Now, it's a little bit windy today, so I'm hoping that, having not brought a jacket, I've just got this shirt on, is going to be fine, although it did say it'd be quite nice weather. So the idea with today is to come out with the camera and just try it out. I'm using the 18-135 lens, which is an XF lens, which is the better range of the Fujifilm kit. Actually, I got this one because it's the same lens that my dad's got. It's a good sort of walking around kind of lens. So the idea today is to take those photos, all be handheld. I'm not going to do anything. I haven't got a tripod with me. I want it to be light. I wanted it to be sort of easy for me to get around, which is why all I've got today is this camera and this camera, and we're going to see how that goes. Might be good. You never know. There is a really, really lovely walk down to the village, although I have noticed that it's all downhill from here. I don't mean the video, although, you know, make of that what you will. No, I meant the walk is all downhill, and I know that I'm going to have to come back up this way. And I've just noticed that there are some cars parked to the left here, so I probably could have parked a little bit closer to the place, although there's no guarantee that I would have been able to get in had I tried to do that. One thing I'm finding about the camera, very first impression of the camera, first of all, I've noticed a little bit of lens creep already. In fact, there you can just see it there. The lens barreled all the way out at 135, and it kind of feels like I have to sort of keep pushing it back in. That's not good, and I think part of the reason of that is actually I'm on this strap that I've got, and it means that the camera's hanging down like that all the time. It's not like this. Let's see if I can do that. Not like this, which is what you'd normally have if you had a normal strap on. I don't know how I'm going to combat that, if I'm going to combat that, or if I'm just going to have to hold the camera all the time to hopefully compensate for the fact the lens is going to creep out. Teething issues, I think that's what you probably call it. So far I haven't taken any pictures, but I've got a feeling that when I round this next corner we're actually going to be in the village, or at least there's some houses up there that might be a little bit photogenic. That's what I'm hoping anyway. So I've just got my first shot, which was looking across with, we've got a how would you describe it? A sort of a square, I suppose, here, where you've got a church in the background, and right at the front you've got this central piece. I really don't know what you'd call these things. I left most of the settings on auto for this particular one, because what I wanted to try and do was to see what the camera would suggest the settings would be. Now, I ended up with a very high shutter speed, sort of 640 shutter speed. So I put the ISO down to 80, which is the lowest setting that you can get on this camera, and then I let it sort of sort itself out first. And here at the moment, because we've got this really, really bright sunny day, you can kind of get away with doing that. So I'm going to have a quick look around the place and see if I can find any other shots that I think might be interesting. But the first shot in the bag, I'm quite happy with it at the moment. I haven't looked at it in the back of the camera at the moment because one of the benefits of shooting with a mirrorless camera is that what you're seeing in the viewfinder is what the final picture is going to look like. And it all looks okay. I don't think there's anything that's blown out. I do have access to a histogram, but I can't remember which button it's on. That's one of the problems with cameras where you've got all of this customization. I've customized a few buttons and I can't remember which one's which. Taking a look at the file when I got back home, I was very impressed with the camera, and after a quick edit, I had a final image. It's not what I'd usually go for, this kind of chocolate box approach to photos. It doesn't really float my boat. But if I wanted to take pictures whilst I could, I'd have to put up with that. Nevertheless, I was very impressed with the sharpness of the final image, and actually that's something that I wouldn't have been able to get with the Nikon camera and lens combination I had before. And the final edit that I was able to achieve, I'm pretty pleased with. One of the great things about the Fuji cameras is the film simulations, and luckily you don't lose those if you decide to shoot in RAW, because they're available as colour profiles from within Lightroom or in Photoshop. So I applied a turner to this image before the edit, and then I was done. But it was now time to move on a little further through the village. So I wanted to try and get that classic shot that everybody gets when they come to Castle Combe, which is looking this way over at there's a bridge, and then the village sort of goes off into the distance. But the problem is that Castle Combe's quite a popular place, and there's a lot of people around, and so perhaps I would have been better if I came here slightly earlier or slightly later, or at a different time of day. I don't know. But a lot of photography is about waiting around for people, and so that's what I'm going to do today. I've also noticed that there's a sort of there's a row of houses across from me right now, and I've just taken a picture of that. I did something a little bit different with that. I changed the settings slightly, but I'm still using an ISO of 80. But this time I've got all manual settings on that picture. So let's just take a quick look at that now. And here it is. As a test for the camera, this day was proving to be very useful. Shooting in difficult light really does highlight the pros and cons of a particular system, and so far I was very impressed, even if the image itself won't win any awards. Well, I managed it. I got the shot that I wanted, and I didn't have anybody in it. It takes a while to do sometimes, but it's ultimately much better to wait around for that to get the right shot than it is to rush things and have to do an awful lot of work in post. And even now I can see that the street is getting busier again. As I was taking the shots, a car went past in one of the shots, and I think I've got a picture that might actually include that car as well. And of course, I've been having to deal with the fact that we've got really harsh light. It must be around about lunchtime now, sometime between 11 and 1, you know. And that in itself causes a problem because the sun is at the highest point that it's going to be. Doesn't mean that we can't play around with things in Lightroom and in Photoshop when we get back into the computer, but it does mean that taking those shots in the first place is a little bit more of a technical exercise. So what I did with on this, I set the exposure compensation. I'm down a half a stop. Even then, I'm at 4.5 aperture, which I suppose is still relatively fast. What I should have done, I think, is put the camera up to 8, maybe 11, just to sort of try and compensate a bit more. I would have got a lower shutter speed, but ultimately, if I get a picture out of it that I like, and I think I've got a picture out of it that I'm going to like, I don't really mind that much. It's fine. We'll see, of course, when we get back into the computer, what it's actually going to turn out like. But until then, I'm going to wander around the place and try and get a couple more pictures. Before I did want to talk about the camera itself and what I'm finding with it at the moment. The big decision to buy this, I've actually talked about in the video that I put out last Thursday. And having done that and having researched lenses and decided what I wanted to buy and how I was going to take my photography forward with this new camera, I noticed a couple of things about this camera, about this APS-C camera, that I haven't noticed about other cameras in similar ranges. The big thing, I think, is the lenses that you can get for it, because a lot of APS-C cameras, they seem to have produced lenses that are right for the APS-C cameras. Fujifilm seems a little bit different in that it's producing lenses which would be right for the full frame equivalent. So what do I mean by that? Okay, well, I had an 18 to 300mm lens on my Nikon. You can't get a super zoom like that on the Fuji cameras at all. What I have instead now is a 18 to 135, which gives you an effective focal range, and I'm going to have to do maths right now, which isn't good, of something like 175. No, it's more than that. 200-ish. So the 18s will be about 28 to 200. I've got that wrong, but it's roughly bigger. I really shouldn't do maths on a video, should I? It's not really my forte. Anyway, that's the sort of lens that you would try and get if you were on a full frame camera. That's the sort of zoom lens you get like that. And I've noticed similar things to that on other lenses that they do. The 100 to 400mm, which is basically their wildlife lens, has that same issue. On an APS-C camera, I've seen lots of 300mm lenses. I've seen some 600mm lenses. On a full frame camera, the equivalent focal range that you're getting between 100 and 400 would be a good sort of wildlife lens. And the fact that you get that converter as well, which will take that up to sort of 530, which would have I mean, you're way over the kind of 600mm mark. Am I rambling yet? I think I'm rambling. Anyway, practical upshot is, if I buy a lens for this camera, the chances are that I'm buying it to fulfill the need of a lens that you would probably get for a full frame camera. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I think it's a pretty good thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why people see the X series cameras as more professional, even though they're still APS-C. Ultimately, so far, just by wandering around, I'm actually finding this camera a lot easier to use than I thought I would. I thought I'd have a problem with the dials. I thought I'd have a problem sort of dialing in settings, because I'm so used to having it on my front and back little ring things. But it's not a problem. It's not an issue at all. So in terms of the camera and the operation of the camera, it actually ends up being a lot easier. Partly because I can see a lot more stuff in the viewfinder than I could see with the Nikon 7500. But still, I'm really pleased with this, and I think that today has been a successful test so far of just kind of wandering around a place and taking some what is essentially street photography in a medieval village. But to really get an idea of what I've got out of this camera, we really have to go back into the studio. So let's take a look at what these shots look after they've been processed. This is the final image of the day. I wanted to use the wall of the bridge as the leading line into the shot, and whilst it works okay, it's not the most interesting of foreground elements. All in all, it was a super successful test of a new camera, and I'm really looking forward to using it for more interesting things in the future. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this little look into the world of a new camera owner. Let me know in the comments if you've used Fuji cameras before, which ones and what you thought of them. Oh, and if you've got any lens recommendations as well, I'd love to hear them. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, the little bell icon at the end, and choose all notifications so you don't miss out on the next video. Also, if you could, please do share this with your friends, family, random strangers you meet in the street, as it really does help the channel. Until next time, thanks for coming along, and remember, keep taking those shots.